Activists acquitted of disorderly behavior in a protest, land donation for nursing home project, and 50 killed in a plane crash in Russia.
Good evening. Henderson Land is donating a piece of land in Toon Moon to build a home for the elderly. The facility is expected to provide about 2,000 places for the aged. Jenny Lamb has our top story.
The piece of land donated by Henderson is in Lam Tay in the Toon Moon district. It is about 100,000 square feet in area. Pokoi Hospital will build a home for the elderly at the site. The plot is close to a light rail transit station on Castle Peak Road. It is now being used as a parking lot. Up to 2,000 elderly people may be able to move into the new facility by the end of 2017. Pokoi Hospital will have to apply for a change in the land use. The hospital plans to seek financial help from the Lotteries Fund for the project. Henderson boss Lee Shao-ki sponsored the land donation. He has made a personal donation of $107 million to Henderson for land evaluation and compensation for repossession. People living in nearby villages said today they have yet to hear about the land repossession. A representative at one of the affected villages, Nai Wai, said they won't mind if the land is to be used for the construction of a home for the elderly. Sources close to Henderson said Lee will be making further donations in future. Chief Executive of the Housing Society, Wong Kit Long, revealed on a radio program earlier that Lee plans to donate another plot of land at Martin Pok in Yuen Long. That piece is about 60,000 square feet in area. Although the land evaluation there has not yet been finalised, the Housing Society estimates it can provide about 800 small flats, the smallest of which will be about 200 square feet. The price of each flat will be about $1.5 million. Secretary for Labour and Welfare, Matthew Chung, issued a statement today to welcome the land donation. He confirmed that Pokoi Hospital has already applied for help from the Lotteries Fund. Jenny Lamb, TVB News.
Investigators are combing through the wreckage of a Russian jetliner which crashed in the city of Kazan last night, killing all 50 people on board. The plane had aborted its first landing and was making a second attempt when disaster struck. Tony Sabine reports.
The Russian Republic of Tatarstan has declared a day of mourning for all 50 victims of last night's crash in the provincial capital of Kazan. The son of the provincial governor and the chief of the local branch of Russia's main security agency were among the victims. 2 foreign nationals also died in the crash. The Tatarstan Airlines Boeing 737 bound from Moscow to Kazan was carrying 44 passengers and 6 crew members when it got into trouble while making a second attempt at a landing. The air traffic controller, who contacted the plane before the crash, said the crew told him they weren't ready for landing as it was approaching, but couldn't say why they needed a go-around. Today, one of the lead investigators said his team is trying to work out why the crew couldn't land the first time round. Investigators are looking at a number of possible causes, including weather, equipment failure, or pilot error. One of the flight data recorders, or black boxes, has been recovered, which should provide the clues to understand how this disaster unfolded. The plane that crashed was built 23 years ago and had seen service with several carriers before entering service with Tatarstan Airlines. The company insisted the aircraft was in good condition. The airline has a decent safety record, but appears to have run into financial problems recently. Investigators have also started looking through the company's records as part of the crash probe. Tony Sabine, TVB News.
Some encouraging signs today that the enormous relief operation underway in the Philippines is beginning to make progress. As critical supplies begin to reach survivors of last week's killer typhoon, the logistical effort is getting more international backing. James Aiken brings us the latest.
Terrifying scenes captured on amateur video the moment the superstorm made landfall in Samar province on November 8th. The images help make some sense of the incredible devastation in this country. Days later, helicopters, relief workers, and steady supply shipments are now becoming almost routine sights here. But this massive relief effort also requires money, lots of it.
There's over £83 million worth of British money being deployed in this theatre of extreme need. And we'll be working throughout the next few weeks to deliver what is essential.
As more countries commit money and resources, the World Bank announced today it will extend an emergency loan of $500 million for reconstruction. And the United States has pledged an additional $10 million, bringing its total to $37 million. With 4 million people displaced, mass evacuations continue in areas where nothing else can be done. And healthcare workers are beginning to focus on epidemic prevention for those staying behind.
There is no food as yes, and we could have we could be sick here because of the air, because of the dead.
The major health concern right now, because of the cleaning up not finalized, I mean also because it's raining, I mean there is an increase of diarrhea cases, upper respiratory infections, especially within the children population.
During a tour of hard-hit Leyte province today, the man who must lead this country out of catastrophe hinted at the personal strain of the crisis and the enormous responsibility ahead.
One is tempted to despair. But the minute I despair, then it cascades down and everybody gets hampered in the efforts of it.
James Aiken, TVB News.
Dozens of tornadoes and intense thunderstorms swept across the U.S. Midwest this past weekend, triggering death and widespread destruction. The state of Illinois took the brunt of the fury on Sunday. A string of tornadoes killed at least 6 people amid powerful winds that flattened entire neighborhoods, flipped over cars, and uprooted trees. The storms then rolled across Indiana, where it injured at least 1 person and caused widespread damage there. The storm also slammed through parts of Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky as it barreled east into the mid-Atlantic states last night.
Workers at a stricken nuclear power plant in Fukushima, Japan, have been removing fuel rods from one of the reactors. The risky operation at Unit 4 of the plant is a crucial first step in stabilizing the crippled facility. 3 reactors suffered core meltdowns at the plant after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. A total of 1,500 fuel assemblies must eventually be removed in a task that is expected to take a year. The operation is seen as a test of operator TEPCO's ability to move ahead with decommissioning the entire facility, which is expected to take decades. Taiwan announced today it's cutting ties with Gambia after the West African nation cut ties with Taipei last week. Taiwanese Deputy Foreign Minister She Ding says Taipei will withdraw all diplomatic staff and stop all bilateral cooperation plans. Gambia says its decision was made in its strategic interests. It was one of a few African countries to recognize Taipei instead of Beijing as the representative of China. In Beijing, the foreign ministry said today it had no contact with the authorities in Gambia when the African nation announced its cutting of ties with Taipei. And Beijing reiterated its one China policy stance at a daily news conference.
Pakistan's government has asked the country's Supreme Court to begin proceedings against former President Pervez Musharraf. It comes after the country's interior minister announced last night that Musharraf was being put on trial for treason for declaring a state of emergency and suspending the Constitution during his time in power. Musharraf, a former army chief, would be the first military ruler tried for treason in the country. He could face the death penalty or life in prison if he's convicted.
Still to come in the broadcast tonight, a dispute over unpaid wages at Lohas Park. RTHK's digital TV channels to go on the air early next year, and details of NASA's latest Mars mission.